Well, you were in Bird on a Wire and Payback as well with Mel Gibson.
Yes.
In both those films. Mel kind of went off the rails at one point. Remember there was the whole anti-Semitic rant?
Yes.
With the cops?
Yes.
And then a bunch of racist stuff that came out afterwards, actually.
Right.
Remember with a recorded conversation with his girlfriend or something being, raped by a bunch of N-words and stuff like that. What are your thoughts on that with someone? I mean, because people don't understand that back in the 80s, Mel Gibson was like the biggest superstar.
He was the king.
He was the king of movies. The biggest films were Mel Gibson films for a nice chunk of years. The Lethal Weapons, and then he did The Passion of Christ.
Yeah.
Like these massive, award-winning bodies of work.
And co-starring with Danny Glover.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, yeah, Lethal Weapon was the biggest thing ever. Was the biggest action film of that era. And then you see him, I mean, I guess he's doing okay now, but this is not the Mel Gibson that you remember. What are your thoughts about that, especially with the racist stuff?
Mel was, I can speak of as my experience with Mel Gibson.
Okay.
I think the things he said were deplorable.
Mm-hmm.
But I worked with him twice. He and Goldie Hawn once, and then.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the most respectful, kind, collaborative actors I've ever worked with. Funny, and committed to his craft 1,000%. He would always come to the set and ask everybody how they're doing, including the crew. So, drugs and alcohol, those kinds of things take you to a different place. They say a drunk man's word is a sober man's thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
But my experience with him was always a positive one.
Yeah. What can you really say about that situation?
Hey man, it's not.
So sometimes it's you sometimes have to separate the art from the artist to a certain degree. I guess Mel Gibson's one of those examples.
Yes, I just you never know what somebody really, really thinks, but I'm sure that's part of his philosophy, but also I think another part of him, he's good people.
Yeah.
It sounds like a contradiction, but
yeah,
most of us are contradictions.
You were in Get Rich or Die Trying.
Yes.
With 50 Cent.
Yes.
And Terrence Howard, right?
Yes.
But what was your experience with 50 Cent? Because that was 50's first acting role, period. He went on to actually have a cool acting career.
Yes, yes.
I think he was in a movie with De Niro, and the Power series, I think, put him over the top.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of his series, as well as him acting, sometimes in the film, in the series. What are your thoughts of him?
What my shock about 50 was, I had only seen him in terms of his music and videos. This gangster type, street thuggish type thing. Speaking great lyrics because he's a good lyricist and great music, But when you're on the set with 50 Cent, one of the first things you're impressed by is how incredible a businessman he is.
Really? How so?
We talked business. I mean, he talked about distribution, what his future he wanted to be in terms of, films, not just acting, but directing, producing, and he understood marketing, and he understood distribution, he understood I just sat there and listened a lot, because he would ask me questions, and I would ask him questions.
Mm-hmm.
But this guy is a brilliant businessman.
I mean, you could see it by his business moves over the years outside of music. I think he realizes that people, he doesn't have the same music career that he had in 2003, and he's been able to pivot and do other things with incorporating music in other ways. Yeah, man. Power is a great series.
Well, I mean, he's smart because, He's aware of the metaphor that I use for Hollywood. I use my own name. There's a four-step metaphor that I use. Step 1, who's Bill Duke? Step 2, you got to get me and find me Bill Duke. Step 3, find me a younger Bill Duke. Step 4, who's Bill Duke? You think there's some reality to that?
Yeah. Yeah, I feel
Not only
you.
for me.
No, I feel you. You were in one of the X-Men films.
Mm-hmm.
You played, I think, a general,
Yes.
which I feel the X-Men movies were some of the finest Marvel films, period.
I think they were great, well written.
Yeah,
Not just action, but the storylines.
the storyline.
Yeah.
What was that like to be in, an unlimited budget superhero film? A blank check, basically. Like, how many hundreds of millions do you need to make this happen? Just whatever.
Well, it was an incredible experience, exposed to some major stars at the time, etc. But I learned a lot from being in it. I'd never worked with green screen before.
Mm.
And as you know, green screen is just a blank green screen. You're responding to, there's nothing on the screen. They're going to put it in later, but you have to respond as an actor to something that isn't there.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the first for me. But it was an incredible learning experience. Yeah. All the technology that they brought forth at that time was revolutionary. It was unheard of.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, those films get the cutting edge of everything that's being worked on
Yes.
at the time.
Yes.
You're getting the best special effects you could possibly get
That's right.
of that year.
That's right.